Welcome to Movie Lovers Club. Our protagonist of the movie, Lemuel Gulliver, wakes up in his messy New York apartment and continues with his morning ritual. He displays his quirky side by talking to his superhero figurines on a shelf and dancing in the shower. He works in the mailroom of a New York newspaper company. Gulliver seems happy to work in the mailroom and go through his life gladly. On that day, he makes friends with Dan, a new employee. Dan reports to Gulliver in the mailing division. Gulliver and Dan run across Darcy Silverman, a journalist, and Gulliver's lifelong crush as they deliver the day's mail. He had been secretly in love with her for a long time. Despite working there for 10 years, Gulliver is not respected by anyone. Dan asserts that Gulliver is afraid to speak and will never advance in life beyond working in the mailroom, and announces he has been promoted to head of the mail department on his first day. As Gulliver leaves the office in distress, he sees Darcy staying late at work. He works up the guts to approach her in her cabin and propose to her. But his fears finally get the better of him. Casually, Darcy asks him if he wants to submit an assignment about travel. Gulliver, who is anxious, accepts and have to submit a travel journal the following day. Later, he copies and pastes a number of articles from the internet for the blog at his home. He gives it to Darcy the following day at work, who is pleased with his writing abilities and asked him to complete a new task. She wants him to visit the Bermuda Triangle and research its story regarding vanished ships in order to write an article on it. Gulliver agrees to impress her without thinking further. Darcy manages a boat and a contact for him. The very following day, Gulliver journeys to Bermuda, where his contact picks him up. He explains to Gulliver how to operate a rented boat after taking him there and claims it's pretty simple. Finally, Gulliver sets out on his boat by himself for the Bermuda Triangle. He has fun for the initial couple hours and soon falls asleep. He eventually awakens to a huge wave in front of him. The boat trembles violently. When Gulliver turns around, he sees a tornado heading in his direction. Gulliver is pulled into the tornado's eyes after being sucked along with his boat. He finds himself bound on the ground and surrounded by angry little men a tenth of his size when he awakens on the island of Lilliput. Lilliput's General Edward has captured him and is carrying him through Lilliput streets as he is taken before the royal family, which consists of King Theodore, Queen Isabel, and Princess Mary. He is imprisoned in chains in the island's dungeon by the ocean and nicknamed the Beast by the Lilliputians. There, he connects with Horatio, another prisoner who was previously the tallest man on the island by a few millimeters and was being held for unlawful courting of Princess Mary. Soon after Gulliver is assigned the task of plowing the fields, suddenly the Blefuscan attack is announced through warning bells. They attempt to kidnap the princess and set the palace on fire. General Edward rushes to save the day in a brave and self-centered manner to impress the king, but Horatio realizes he won't make it to the princess in time and asks Gulliver for assistance. Horatio frees Gulliver from his chains, and then the two of them set off to save the kingdom. Gulliver tosses the enemy spies into the town pond. In order to put out the fires in the palace and save the king, Gulliver does the only thing he can think of: he takes a sizable leak. He succeeds in dousing the flames, but Edward, who receives a thorough wash in the yellow substance, is not amused. The people of Lilliput host a lavish feast in honor of their savior, and start building Gulliver his ideal seaside home. Gulliver starts enjoying a lavish life, and the islanders are astounded by the stories he tells about him, most of which are taken from well-known movie scenes. With the assistance of Gulliver, Horatio is able to approach the princess successfully. In an attempt to get rid of Gulliver, when General Edward finally locates Gulliver's ship, Gulliver expresses his wish to stay. The king orders Edward to take a break so Gulliver can be appointed as the new general in his place. In an effort to take back his position, Edward damages the island's defense system. The armada of the Blefuscan then approaches and they launch a massive cannonball attack. Gulliver has been summoned to save the kingdom again. In an effort to break a deal with the opposition, he wades out into the sea. Instead, the Blefuscans launch an attack, but Gulliver's belly deflects all the cannonballs with as an elastic band, which then refires the metal at the ships. Gulliver takes hold of the guide ropes and drags the armada away, further solidifying his relationship with the Lilliput. A document on how to build your own robot was part of Gulliver's salvaged loot, and Edward sneaks off to the enemy with it. Edward builds a huge robot and returns to Lilliput. He challenges Gulliver in a duel. Gulliver accepts Edward's challenge to the duel. After being terribly beaten by the robot, Gulliver is exiled to the island they don't talk about while being bound to a massive raft. The Blefuscan seize control of Lilliput, and the king and queen are imprisoned in the dungeon. Darcy visits Bermuda in search of Gulliver. She ended up shipwrecked on the island of Lilliput because of the same storm. Edward captures her. When Gulliver awakens, he finds himself on the island they don't talk about, and discovers himself outside a huge house. He is taken away by a small girl who also happens to be a giant compared to him and forced to embrace a new life as a doll living in a huge doll's house. Horatio journeyed to the Forbidden Island to free Gulliver. They jump from the house and float back to Lilliput using a deceased pilot's parachute. In the dungeons, Gulliver discovers Darcy chained. He shares the truth about his past, as well as his affection for Darcy. He frees everyone and then challenges General Edward to a winner-take-all rematch, showing off his newfound courage. Edward is prepared in the enormous robot, and a long battle took place between them, but Gulliver seems to be in serious trouble. With courage, Horatio seizes a horse and enters the robot. Horatio attacks Edward inside the robot, and disables some of the robot's functionalities. This time people saw more competition in the battle. Gulliver throws the robot a couple blows to the head before giving him a robot wedge to put him back to sleep. As the Lilliput king and Blefuscan leader prepare to fight once more, Gulliver stops them from fighting. After they both agree to avoid fighting, everyone is at ease once again. The princess resists being captured by General Edward and drives him away. In the end, Gulliver is back in New York, working as a travel writer, spending more time with Darcy, and we can see framed copies of his published travel essays on the wall. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to stay connected.